successful ones have been obviously the strict press, which has just come to brute strength. Number 8, lane 1. They are off.
All right, welcome back to another one of my interview series. I'm joined today with Alec Petrone. Alec is a World's Strongest Man OSG competitor as well as a Arnold Classic Strongman competitor. And correct me if I'm wrong, Alec, were you at the 2022 World's Strongest Man as well or just 2023?
Yeah, 2022 was my first one, and then I was back there this year for my second one in 23.
So that's so funny. I don't even remember seeing you there my first year because my first year was 2022 as well, and then 2023, I remember seeing you a bunch more because we walked out actually a bunch together.
Yeah, but, no, I enjoy seeing your entry clip has me in it because we were in the same press met heat. So yeah.
Yeah. Funny thing too, at that contest, we'll start back on and get your story, but just kind of giving you an intro starting out here. When I go through competition, I get so tunnel vision, I don't really notice many people around me. But when I went back and watched that contest and some of the stuff, you're there for like so many events. And then after that, I really started noticing you on Instagram as you were training for the Arnold Classic. When you were doing some of the movements you were doing, the axle in particular, I was like, this guy, he has put some time in because you're efficient and the way you move with that axle and stuff and just your overall movement, what you were doing. I went back and even watched you when they released it for the full under 80 kilo World's Strongest Man. OSG released that. I watched you and all those movements and, man, you've got it down, brother. I mean, it's like anything. It's putting that last little piece together, but the potential, I look at you kind of somebody like me, an up-and-comer, and, they're not talking about us yet, but they will someday. So it was very, very cool to see. So I was like, this has got to be a guy I got to get on one of these series. So that's what I saw when I was watching you. So anyway.
Right on. Yeah, I appreciate you saying that.
Yeah, I mean it. I'm not just blowing steam either because I really do mean that. We'll get into some of your techniques and some of your training ideologies in a little bit. I'd really like to hear more about that. But kind of starting out, where did you start out? What was your young life like? Did you start playing sports at a young age, or how did that kind of start?
Yeah, so I was big into sports. Baseball was kind of the main thing. Okay. I did play some basketball growing up as well. Baseball pretty early on, maybe high school became like my path that like I wanted to take baseball as far as I could, play professionally, like every kid does. And that was sort of my entry to strength and conditioning was in support of that. Okay. So I was able to play in college and I was injured pretty much the whole time. So I guess part of my story is like I had that sort of youthful, I'm invincible attitude beaten out of me pretty early.
Sure.
Because I was hurt the whole time in my college career, and the process of building myself back up from scratch time and time again is sort of what ingrained like a deeper appreciation and love for the strength side of things.
Sure.
So that kind of set me on the path.
Now you just said really a whole bunch right there so fast. So let's back up. Okay, you're playing baseball at a young age. I'm going to keep in order, but I want to touch on something you said there. So you said you started having injuries really bad, and you had injuries in college that really kept you out. Now, let me guess. That was probably from just excessive use of what were you, pitcher?
No, I was an infielder.
Okay, but just excessive use of doing stuff that, I mean, I guess just wearing you down from the sport. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, some of it, yeah. So I had elbow surgery, Tommy John. That's very common, more common for pitchers, certainly.
A kid.
Yeah.
The only reason to ask a kid I know, I just brought him over here and I was helping him because he had surgery on his elbow because he's been a pitcher ever since he was, really, really young. And he's got, now it's structurally sound, but he's got tendons and, just nerves and strained muscles and ligaments, So I was going through range of motion and stuff trying to help him with that. So I'm not going to cut you off, but kind of what he said. He didn't train weights really much at all, just light, but he didn't have that base.
Yeah. And throwing a baseball, like it's a pretty vicious thing. Like it's the most violent thing like the human body can do, really, when you look at how fast the ball and socket rotates degrees per second, like 6,000 degrees per second or something. It's and all the structures from the shoulder down to the elbow are kind of along for that ride, and it can beat you up.
So that's what happened to you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so when you were coming through in high school, were you training in the weight room at all then, or?
Yeah. So I wasn't big into it at first, like as a freshman in high school. I had an older brother who was big into training. He played baseball as well. And I remember like I was coming home playing like video games. And one day he's just said he came home after a lifting session and found me playing video games. He was like, "Tomorrow you're going to be in the weight room with me." I was like,
good,
"Yes, sir." So yeah, maybe the first couple of years, it was just very bodybuilder-ish stuff. I did kind of like junior and senior year of high school start to get a little more into the kind of training that you might expect a baseball player to do, a little more explosive stuff, maybe some rotational stuff. But I mean, bodybuilder things were kind of always there. I was a pretty small guy. I was like 5'6", 150 pounds. So I've filled out a little bit since then.
Now, is that how you graduated?
Yeah, I was like low 150s,
Really?
maybe mid 150s by the time I got into college.
Yeah. Now, that first experience in the weight room, what did you think? Was it positive? Was it, I hate this, I don't want to go back? What was that like?
No, I definitely got bit by it, especially towards like the latter couple years in high school. My high school put on a 1,000-pound club competition, sort of like a mock powerlifting thing. It wasn't like all 3 lifts on one day. It was like one day we'll do squat, another day we'll do bench. It was over the course of the week. Yeah, and for sure. And my first year I did it as a junior. I got 945, and I was the only one who so we also did like a Wilks type formula to have like a leaderboard that was plastered on the wall. And I think I was like second or third in that, but I was the only one on that leaderboard who didn't actually get 1,000 because everyone else who did it were football players. They were all big and they're actually getting 1,000 pounds. Yeah. So like it brought some like ridicule on myself. I was kind of strong for like a small baseball player, but I wasn't strong like in an absolute sense. Yeah. So then the following year, my senior year, like I was gunning for that 1,000, and I still remember like maybe you can relate like blackout moments where like you kind of just close your eyes and remember what you saw when you hit a lift or something. I needed a 420 deadlift to get to the 1,000 pounds my senior year. And I had not really, I think maybe 405 was as much as I'd done in prep for it. And when I say prep, it wasn't like a structured prep really. But yeah, I pulled the 420, I got hyped, and like that moment of sort of like a slight emotional outburst. Yeah. Like that kind of stuck with me. Like, yeah. It was still baseball. Like I was not going to turn to powerlifting quite yet or strength sports. Sure. But that moment did sort of light a fire under me because like I saw the progression of objectively of year to year. I used to be here, now I'm here, and that's really what drew me to strength sports was just the objective measure of improvement through time.
Yeah. And what you just touched on there too, talking about that little bit of emotion, adrenaline for that specific lift. That is something that that's basically what draws all of us to the sport. It's such a small thing and very little reward, but it's just that feeling, it's addicting. I mean, that right there is what you're going for. So, so going through that, were people telling you like that you were pretty strong, you had potential at it, or is it just something did not really like that? It was just more for you, did anybody encourage you in that? I mean, how did that even come about?
Yeah, not really. Like I I guess when I look back on like my baseball days, and I got more serious about it into college with the injuries and stuff, because like when you're not playing on the field, lifting became more and more part of my identity because like I could no longer experience that on the field because I was hurt all the time. By the end of my baseball days, like I kind of looked at myself as strong for a baseball player. By the end of it, I did kind of know that I wanted to dabble in strength sports. I did not necessarily think I was going to be on a world stage with it. It was kind of just for me a way to stay competitive after like the baseball phase of my life ended.
Yeah. Okay. So you go to college, baseball, you said you got injured, it's kind of starting to close down. So what was the route? Because did you go do powerlifting first or did you do strongman? What were you introduced to first?
I did. So I did a couple powerlifting meets. I was loosely aware of strongman. Like I had images growing up, like watching when it was like the Metrex World's Strongest Man, guys pulling trucks on ESPN. Like I knew it was a thing. And so I was like kind of a fan. I didn't know it was a weight class sport. I knew powerlifting was, and I had that little experience doing the mock powerlifting meet. So I was like, yeah, I'll try powerlifting. I kind of got exposed to strongman a little more deeply, kind of just through YouTube. I was sort of biding my time after my baseball career ended. I was going to go into the military. I'm sure we can get into that later. But in the sort of in between period, I was just working as like a fitness center supervisor at my grad school. I had like very early morning shifts. And I would just watch every World's Strongest Man from the 70s through now, just like watching the whole history of the sport, all the Arnolds too, the IFSOs, like literally everything that exists strongman wise that is on YouTube, I consumed. I started to get more and more interested. I was like, this is awesome. Like, is there a way to do this? And then I sort of went down a rabbit hole. I was like, oh, this is a weight class sport. But I didn't like fully buy in, like, because I was hurt a lot. It was sort of on my mind. Like I didn't want to jump into something that was so risky, like from an injury perspective. Like I looked at powerlifting as the safe thing. Like you pick your lifts, like you make it as risky as you want to, because you can pick your own lifts. Yeah. You can modulate it that way. But strongman, the weights are what they are. And if you can't do it, and obviously it forces you into some sketchy positions sometimes. Like it's funny. You mentioned axle technique. I distinctly remember I was watching like 2015 or 16 World's Strongest Man, like on TV. It was like a rerun on CBS Sports. And my dad comes in. We were watching Brian Shaw do like axle clean and press. And I was like, yeah, this sport's awesome, but I don't think I'll never do an I'll tear my bicep. I'll never do an axle press like that. So like I sort of had 1 foot in, 1 foot out. Like I wasn't committed to it. I eventually just picked a contest to do. It had events that like seemed easy enough to learn, like things that I was already somewhat familiar with. Like it was a frame deadlift, so it was like kind of like a trap bar. I had to learn how to log press, stone to shoulder, a wheelbarrow carry, and like an arm over arm pull. That was my first contest. So I did kind of just hop into one. So I kind of got bit by the bug. I hadn't fully committed yet though. And
how? Okay, so you before even backing up before that, you had done a couple powerlifting meets. Yeah, that's in your college days. You did some powerlifting meets, and then the strongman. Nobody even like said, "Hey, come do the show with me" or this that. You just searched and found one just because you said, "I'm gonna try it."
Yeah, God bless the internet. If not, I wouldn't have known about the sport.
And what year was this?
That would have been 2017 was my first contest.
Okay. That's hilarious. That is so similar to me too. I kind of did the same path. You do powerlifting first because there was more powerlifting, and then you find a strongman. It's like, yeah, let's try it. I'd like to, you don't know what it was,
Yeah. And I guess what drew me to it, what still draws me to it, like I love the blend of athleticism and strength. Like there are some standardized lifts like powerlifting or Olympic weightlifting, but there are some things that can never be standardized that just requires technique, tactics, athleticism, and it's always rotating. And I feel like it's really tough to burn out everyone can experience burnout, but I feel like strongman is built sort of like anti-burnout because it's always different events. Like if you choose your path a certain way, like you can always be doing things differently and keeping it fresh. I love the sport.
Yeah. With that too, when you did your first contest, I'll get into kind of what you felt and things about it, but like real quick too, did you have a different expectation for the sport prior to when you got into it? For example, for me, when I started the sport, everybody was so big, everybody was so strong. I focused very little on what you're talking about, athleticism. I just thought I had to eat all the food, get as statically strong as I could, and that was going to be it. And when I had to run and throw a keg over or load a keg over bar and come back, it blew up in my face because, I wasn't prepared, wasn't trained for that. Deadlift, I was okay. Some of this was okay, but like anything moving was out the window. Was that a shock for you, kind of going into that? Or were you is that what drew you to in the first place? Because you were able to see that was athleticism.
Yeah, that is kind of what drew me to it. I didn't really stress about filling out a weight class for my first several contests. Like I kind of just wanted to learn the events.
Yeah.
And go from there, like one at a time. And I didn't really at that time have consistent access to implements. So like that first contest, I mentioned a wheelbarrow and a stone to shoulder. Like I kind of just found a natural stone in the woods near where I lived, and I practiced stone to shoulder. I had this rickety old rusty wheelbarrow. I loaded up with cinder blocks. Like it was very unstable, very unsafe actually.
Yeah.
But I would do a few runs of that. So yeah, I mean, I would just kind of do some general strength stuff in the gym. And sort of mix in events like as I could, but I didn't have consistent access to implements back then. I did enjoy kind of that, like, let's go out in nature and lift some stuff aspects to it.
Yeah, it's just a raw sense. There's just I agree. I like that aspect of it as well. I didn't like it at the start. Especially kind of coming from powerlifting where everything is so standard and exactly. At first, I didn't like it because it was a real change up for me. But as I got into it, I thought, man, there's a lot of tactics. And if I can get my mind right with this and how to, it's why you got the greats. You got your Magnus Magnuson, you got Mitchell Hooper now. These guys who are just able to, adapt to whatever is in front of them. And that's what makes a good strongman. And the greats just keep doing that, especially in our weight class. I think you can tell me what you think about this too, but I think our weight class is probably the best. I'm biased, but all around athletes for being able to move a weight that we are able to move and do the things with it. For example, I mean, even just picking up a 300-pound sandbag and running with it and going with it. I mean, they use that weight for the regular weight class guys, they don't do it faster, but I mean, there's some things that, we have to do. That's just, it's just, you have to be able to move your body around it. And that's a really cool part of the sport. So I agree with what you're saying. Okay. Real quick, going on to with that. You do that first meet. How did it go?
The first strongman meet, I was in a novice class, no weight classes. So like, again, I almost use that as like armor to like not have any expectations. Like everyone's lumped into the same novice class. I'm up against like heavyweight dudes, lightweight dudes. It was okay. I zeroed my first event. I think to this day, it's the only event I've ever zeroed, but and I knew that was the biggest risk coming in was like the log. It was a 200-pound log press. And I got to a point in training where I'd hit it one time and like I had missed it a few times. I hit it once, like everything had to kind of go perfect. And like, it's funny because I remember stressing out because I learned that when I got there, I was counting like the plates and the log. It was like the Rogue 12-inch log, which was 135 pounds empty. I'm looking at the weights. I'm like, wait, this is 205, not 200. And I was like freaking out. Like nowadays, I just kind of laugh at that. But back then it's like, I might not get 200. That extra 5 pounds might as well have been like another 30 pounds.
Yes.
But yeah, I zeroed the log. I was kind of frustrated, but the rest of the show went pretty well. I think the what I took away from it, which I think I might not have taken it away at the time, but having the benefit of the retrospect now, I did pretty well on the wheelbarrow run. So I think I've always been a little well suited towards moving events like that, particularly like yoke farmer's frame style things. I had like just a kind of a natural sense of how to, and it was like a turn with the wheelbarrow. And turns get weird, especially like farmers with the turn, like that changes the game a little bit. But I was, athletic enough to kind of just figure it out on the fly and move my feet fast with weight. And it wasn't very heavy back then, but like of all the events back in that first show, that was the one that where I thought to myself, like, I can be pretty good at moving weight.
Yeah. Yeah. And my gosh, I'd say the wheelbarrow is pretty good training with that old rickety thing and all this cinder blocks. That was probably you most prepared for that one.
Yeah, I'm not like necessarily in the camp of like the unstable surface and unstable bar training. Like time and place for everything. But yeah, back then it was kind of like that. It was like only using a chaos bar if you're getting ready for like a regular barbell.
Yeah, and was the competition in a gym or was it like outside in a parking lot or both?
It was in a gym. It wasn't like a strongman gym. It was sort of like a large turf like sports center that could be like a soccer field or something. That was
Okay, very cool. And so your sense coming out of that meet, what did you place in that meet?
I was mid pack. I don't remember exactly. I think I had beat like 3 or 4 people out of a class of like 12, something like that. So yeah, mid bottom pack for sure.
Yeah.
So but I was at least I was mature enough then to like not worry about necessarily where I was placing. I just wanted to feel good about my own performance relative to like what my training suggested.
And did you have anybody go there with you and do that, or is this kind of you just signed up and showed up? And
yeah, I kind of went solo. I was so this was actually in Texas. I was living in New York at the time. I did make a trip of it. Like I had one of my best friends living in Houston, Texas. So I saw this contest. I was like, I was going to go visit him anyway. Let me just do this. So he was there with me, but yeah, in terms of like coaching or anything like that, I kind of just went solo.
I really respect that. I really respect that. That's like dead on what I did. And how old are you at this time?
Back then, when I started, I think I was like 23 or 24.
How old are you now?
I'm 30 now, turning 31 next month.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow, that's pretty close to that story. So so you go away from that. You go away from that meet. What's in your head? Are you thinking, man, I want to do more of this? You're thinking, I'm kind of in the bottom. I don't know here. What was your kind of thought process?
Yeah, I definitely got bit by the strongman bug. Like I was looking for my next contest to do. I was still like kind of 1 foot in powerlifting, 1 foot in strongman. Like I said, I hadn't committed to like taking strongman as far as I could, climbing up the leaderboards, anything like that. Nationals, I don't think I even knew what nationals was back then.
Right.
But I definitely enjoyed it and I wanted more of it.
Yeah. Okay. So moving on from that, you're living in New York. You do your first meet in Texas, which that's pretty wild to me anyway, just to go travel there. I mean, that makes it more intimidating outside of your home, you know? I mean, that just changes it a little bit. But anyway, okay, do the first meet. You go to the second meet. How long in between was your first meet to second meet?
Several months. It wasn't like back to back, but it wasn't a super long time. It was, I'd say 4 or 5 months.
As soon as you could find another show, pretty much.
Yeah.
And how did that one go?
Let me see. Second show. You know what? That was actually like a record breakers show. Really? Again, because I was like 1 foot in powerlifting, 1 foot in strongman. I saw that as sort of like a middle ground of like, it was run by Todd Georgie, New York Strong, up in Westchester County, New York. Great gym, great people there. Still doing it. I think I signed up for Max Log and Max Atlas Stone. So like it wasn't a full contest, but I remember being very dissatisfied with that one because like I think again I laugh at it now with like the whole warm-up situation. Part of the sport is to be able to like not necessarily control how much time you've got between your attempts, especially in like a record breakers 1 rep max situation where you might be following yourself. So yeah, like I had to perform all 3 lifts in like a pretty tight window. And obviously my numbers were nowhere near what they were when I was like structuring my jumps perfectly.
Sure. Yeah.
And that actually like, it might've been a turning point because like I knew I didn't come close to what I had within me. So I very impulsively signed up for like the very next show that I could do. And I drove down to Tennessee to do that. Yeah.
So that one pissed you off pretty good.
It did. Yeah.
Okay. So also with that, you had Atlas stones that you were able to train with to prepare for that?
So at that time, I did like weekly drop-in sessions at Granite Barbell in a little further north in New York. So yeah, like once a week I would touch Atlas stones.
Did anybody kind of give you pointers on how to do an Atlas stone, or you just watched on YouTube? Do you know about tacky? I mean, how did that all come about?
Yeah, so they did have some people at that gym at Granite that would like give you pointers. The owner, Brett Somerville, former Arnold amateur competitor in the open category. So there was some instruction. I benefit. I mean, Strongman, as I'm sure you know, if you get into a gym where there are guys or girls doing it, people are more than willing to show you and give you pointers on how to do it. But yeah, I relied heavily on YouTube. I remember watching all of Brian Alsru's videos, all of Alan Fall's videos back then. Those were sort of like when I think of like OG instructional how-to strongman event videos. That's what I think of.
Yep. Yeah, that's very true. He was really ground floor for all that stuff. Yeah. I mean, really, for me, for finding him, he wasn't probably the first strongman I found, but when you come to the techniques and stuff, and he made a lot of stuff too, and he kind of can-do attitude, so it kind of, made me to where I thought, okay, we can make this happen. We can adjust here, so very true. I had forgotten about him kind of until you said that right then. Yeah. Okay, so you do the second meet, goes to crap, you hate it. Yeah. So you're ready for it to come back. So you go do your third meet. Now, this is all what, 2018 maybe?
Yeah, that sounds about right. 17, 18.
Okay. And now you're going in a weight class as well.
Yes. I think I did a few novice shows. Yeah. I don't think I did open until maybe, so right before I joined the Navy, I think, which was late 2018. I did my first open lightweight show in like late 2018.
Okay. So you did. Okay. So did you ever win a novice before you went to an open?
I think I might have won by default one time. Actually, no, I did. I think there were two guys in a class, and I won my last novice show.
So then when you did that, you kind of like, okay, we're going to go on to open now.
I never necessarily thought about doing novice until I won. I really kind of just looked at the weights. And if I thought I'd zero more than two of the events, then I'd say, no, let me do novice. And truth be told, maybe my last novice show, I probably could have done open. And people talk a lot about like when to move up. I don't necessarily think it matters that much. Whether you have a moment where it's like, okay, I probably should have done open in this one, I think if you have a long-term view of the sport and you're kind of focused on your own progression, doesn't matter all that much.
I couldn't agree more. If you're not just trying to take home a trophy and say that you beat everybody, if you're actually worried about your self-growth and it's a stepping stone to propel you forward, there's no point to go to a show if you're going to get crushed by all the weights. You're not even going to learn how to actually perform under them and get better and get that skill acquisition, because it's all different. Things we do in the gym, it is different when you get to contests. So I couldn't agree more with that.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, if you're worried about progressing, go what you can do with. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So then you went to the Navy.
Yeah.
And what brought that on after? Because you finished your college, you're doing strongman. I mean, kind of where did that come from? And thank you for your service.
Oh, I appreciate it. Yeah. So I guess I mentioned baseball was sort of my life's plan back through college. As I went through all those years of injury after injury after injury, I obviously had a plan B in the back of my head the whole time. And the military, maybe ever since middle of high school, was that. Injury after injury, plan B gradually was looking like it was becoming plan A. I held on to the dream for a while. Like I redshirted twice. I was going to be one of those old 24-year-old college baseball players who were playing with 17-year-olds. But I decided that I wasn't going to turn pro anymore. It just wasn't in the cards. So pretty much right after that, I started getting the wheels turning on joining the military. My path to the Navy specifically was a little convoluted, where I was kind of between branches. There was lots of changes, I guess, in my plans, but I'll spare. It's a long story. That's kind of convoluted, but yeah, the Navy, I joined late 2018. And I did 5 years. Just got out this past October, and really, I think the last show I did before the Navy was the one that. I guess by the time I was in the Navy, I was dead set on taking strongman as far as I could. So kind of the duration of my strongman career, like seriously, in terms of wanting to climb the ladder, sort of ran in conjunction with my service in the Navy. So yeah, and my path to go into Arnold, OSG, and PSL coming up, qualified for that back last year, all during active duty Navy service.
Now, would you say that was helpful, beneficial for you, or would you say that was I mean, I can probably guess mentally it was probably beneficial, but like trying to train strongman in the Navy, was that hard to do?
So for me, I made it not hard. There are definitely some obstacles. I spent basically my entire career doing rotating shift work where I'm nocturnal for a period of time.
Okay.
And it was not easy planning training around that, but it was such a priority for me that I'd move heaven and earth to make sure I got my training done. And like I said, it was my top priority for basically that whole time. Like I moved my equipment into a storage unit. I trained out of a storage unit gym for the majority of that time because I knew I'd have 24/7 access to the equipment that I needed. And even when it comes down to like the types of assignments you take, being on a ship was never necessarily what I wanted out of my military career. So you might think, why join the Navy then? But because when you're on a ship, you can't really train strongman. So I was fortunate in that I was able to sort of control my destiny enough to take tours that enabled me to keep training and keep competing. So I was able to get through it. It was not necessarily easy, but in the military we get a good amount of leave time. So I was never necessarily strapped for, I want to go compete, but I don't have leave, I was blessed to have very supportive chains of command that would kind of enabled me to go to all the contests that I wanted to do, so long as the mission was sort of supported. So yeah, not easy, but I found a way to make it work for me.
So you had bought a lot of your own equipment because you said you put them in a storage unit, rented one of those.
Yeah, so it was kind of always my dream to have my own gym, and I had sort of sporadic pieces of equipment by the time I joined the Navy. Without really a place to put them, I sort of just decided that I was going to start a gym. So like the first permanent duty assignment I had was in Illinois. I had like this really small sort of like kind of studio apartment, and I like set up the squat rack next to my bed. It was weird, man. I was like, did I make the right decision here?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's when kind of the storage unit idea came about, because like I didn't have a garage at the time, but I thought my training and living arrangement would just be better if I kind of separated those things. So I kind of gradually built out the storage unit with the equipment that I wanted through time, and it kind of became like part of my identity. Like I trained at a storage unit at like 2 a.m. It was good times. I remember those sessions fondly.
Yeah. I absolutely love your story, dude. This far in the story, I absolutely love that. Like going out, buying your own equipment, putting it in a storage unit. There are so many people that will not do things and do this sport without the glamour, without the support team around them, without a nice facility that has everything, without you're got a storage unit. You're just training by yourself, grinding, buying your own equipment. Like I relate to that so much. I didn't even get a storage unit, but I mean, I've been a basement lifter my whole life. Ever since I was 11 years old, that's how I've done it. And I've just kept acquiring. I mean, to sit here and talk to you, it is so easy to see the passion that you have for the sport. I mean, the passion to go out and buy your equipment, to put it in a storage unit and tote that crap all around wherever you're going, you know, in the military. That's commitment. That is a lot of commitment. I really applaud you for that. I'm loving this so far. So, okay. Yeah. You're going through that, and you're still competing, and your commanding officers, they're real supportive, you said.
Yeah,
okay?
yeah.
So you're going through that during this time. Are you just continuously making traction? Are you doing better at shows? Did you ever have a moment at a show where you thought, I guess you said it was in 2018 before you joined the military, you had a thought, I can go kind of far with this. So shows, I guess, are going good for you, or you're climbing the ladder is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, it definitely wasn't fast. Like it was slow, steady progress, kind of consistently through time. I really don't feel like I had a breakthrough until maybe just 2021 or 2022. My first year getting to OSG.
Yeah.
Or rather, I guess. So I've been fortunate to stay pretty healthy throughout my strongman career. I had my first little bang up at Nationals 2021. I'm gonna call it a tear, slight strain tear in my quad on a max log press. I really thought that I was ready at that Nationals to maybe get into that top quarter to get an Arnold bid. But I hurt myself on the first event. I kind of limped through the rest of day one. I had to pull out. I had nothing. It felt dangerous to get under a heavy yoke with a compromised leg like that. So I pulled out, and I was kind of down because I felt like I was ready to take that big step. From that point on, I was on sort of a pretty fast and steady climb. I got healthy. I did my first Strongman Corp regionals that summer, Battle of the Bridge, the show that Josh Hendrickson put on. And I won that. I went to USS Nationals. I took fourth there. I then went to qualify for OSG at the Northwest Regional. So I really that year, 2022, there was steady progress throughout my whole career, but that year was like things started to shift where maybe I was starting to get to a different level of performance at these shows.
Sure. And wow. Okay. So qualifying, even backing up just a little bit, you qualified for nationals. Was that a goal to get to nationals then, I guess?
Yeah. Once I learned what nationals was, it became a goal. Yeah. I think my first nationals, I did it was the online, it was like the COVID year. So it felt a little like not quite the same to qualify through an online for nationals. Cause really it was just like, they set the weights that you had to hit. And if you hit it, you're through. So yeah, it felt like a goal that, while I was proud to get there, and being at that level, like you don't really know what your strengths and weaknesses are as an athlete until you get out to a bigger show and you have a large sample size of athletes to go up against. Because without that at local shows, like you might know that you're making some progress, but with such a small field and lightweights, our class, like sometimes local shows, like you only have a handful of guys. And we're usually a tight knit class. But until you get into a field of 20, 30, 40 guys, you don't really know where you stack up and what your good lifts are and what you need to work on. So getting onto that big stage, like once I knew I wanted to climb the ladder, I wanted to get into those bigger shows and to see how I stacked up and to go from there.
When did you find out about OSG? When did you even know that was a thing?
Yeah, I was loosely aware of it, maybe like in 2018, 2019. I think what was 2017, its first year in North Carolina. I didn't really know how to get there. I kind of just knew it was a thing. It didn't really get on my radar as something that I wanted to get to until maybe like 2021, that time frame.
Okay. Yeah. For me, I competed at a show, and I actually hadn't done strongman for, doesn't matter, it's a long story for me too, but anyway, I hadn't done strongman for a while, and I just trained like for 6 weeks and did a show, and the guy who beat me, he beat me by just a small point. It was back and forth all day. He beat me, and later that year he made a post, and he was at OSG, and I think I had just heard about it before that. But he made a post and he went there, not off of that show, of course, but he qualified through other competitions and he got to that show. And that was the year 2019. I think Tommy Lavelle was the winner, and you had guys like Daniel Ashcroft. He was real big name, because you saw there was YouTube stuff with these guys on there,
Right.
And just seeing that guy who I competed against is like, it gave me the belief system. Like, wait a second, I can go here. So, because I saw him do it, and I thought he was not much better than me. He was just more polished than me. I had more strength in a lot of things, but he was more polished. I was like, I can do this. So that's when I found out about it, started pushing towards it. But you didn't even really start pushing towards that one per se until you said 2020, 22, or 21.
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah, around that time frame.
Yeah, and you went and did the qualifier. Which qualifier did you do for that?
I did the Northwest Regional. So I flew out there to the West Coast because I think this was all the regionals that were kind of on the East Coast were sort of right up against the other two. Like I did the Strongman Court Regionals, the Northeast Regionals, and then USS Nationals pretty close in June. And then like the very next week was the OSG. So putting 3 like big contests into a tight window just didn't. I wouldn't be able to be ready for that. So really it was either qualify through online or take a shot to fly out to the West Coast to qualify there. Onlines don't really suit me. Like, as I said before, moving events are sort of what I need to be competitive. Like I'm proud of the progress I've made statically. Like I'm slowly climbing up towards competitiveness in those. But even now, like and this was reflected back in the Arnold, I need a certain kind of event to like, really make my points. And at the world level, at the regional level, I still want a full slate of 5 events over 3 static lifts. Pretty much any day. I prefer that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was the Northwest Regional was how I got to my first OSG.
And when you got to OSG, what was that experience like for you? What did you feel when you got there? That first
Man, like you mentioned tunnel vision before, like 100% like tunnel vision. Like it's very easy to become like a fanboy of like the big guys. Like Z is there, but even your own class, like you said, the guys like Tommy and Dan Ashcroft, like, and being like not necessarily one of the most muscled guys in our class. Like it's very easy to sort of look around and be like, shit, I'm with these guys.
Yeah.
But I did my best to stay away from that type of attitude and become very tunnel vision on my own performance. But it was a blast, man. Like I had no expectation for where I'd be like at the world level, your first time. Like you could have told me, I think it was a 40-man roster. If you told me 40th, I'd be like, okay, that's where we are first time around. We'll climb from there. But in all honesty, like I think I took 15th. That was literally the top of what I conceived was even possible for my first time there. So I was really over the moon with it. And that was a massive confidence boost because there's always a bit of like, do you belong your first time on the world level? So yeah, that was, I said like 2022 was sort of like my year that I reached a new level. It culminated in that and OSG, which really gave me confidence that I could, one day make the finals, maybe get on the podium one day. Like I always just wanted to fulfill my own potential as an athlete to become as strong as I could be, and wherever that was, the chips fall where they may. But having a pretty good placing your first time around was a massive confidence boost for me.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I mean, what a mature approach you took to that too, because, man, that's like complete polar opposite for me. Like you said, being a fanboy, I've said this before, but I couldn't. I was like trying so hard to not be a fan, and I just couldn't be a competitor. I was so much of a fan, and I was so nervous, and I had so much adrenaline the whole time. I had a terrible showcase. So for you to go, but see, you had done so much shows and you had so much confidence as an athlete. You already knew the deal. You're not trying to look at this guy, that guy. You only do that, to kind of know where you're at. It's not like you're doing that like you can get so sidetracked on what your mission is. You still had it set up in your mind like this is my mission and what I have to do, and only you can do what's in front of you. You can't think 6 events ahead. You have to do what's just right there in front of you. So that's a very mature approach. You came out with 15. That's really good. So then coming from that, 2023, how'd you qualify for this year?
So this year I took a bit of a gamble because between OSG and the Arnold, I looked at the Ode Hogan Classic in California where they had the bid for OSG and Arnold. And I was like, wow, I had no idea that existed. That's too good of an opportunity to pass up. So that's kind of a tight turnaround between doing OSG. It was November then to then Ode Hogan Classic in January before the Arnold in March. Because Arnold, another world show, like I wanted to be my best for that.
Yeah.
But I wanted to get back to Worlds as well. So I went. I won the Ode Hogan Classic to get to OSG 23, which also qualified me for the Arnold, which I ended up not needing because I had basically a dream come true for me at the Arnold just a couple months after that when I got on the podium of that show. So yeah, that, I mean, we can talk about that.
Yeah, let's talk about that. My gosh, I didn't even know. There's a 2023 you got on the podium.
I did. I took second place, which again, like when I set out in this sport to get to the highest level I could be, like I said, I just wanted to fulfill my own potential, whatever that was. And if I could get on the podium of an international show, like that's just gravy. Like that, literally a dream come true. I could have gone my whole career and not had that. And as long as I thought that I reached my potential, I would have been okay. But to have a result like that was, it's tough to put into words. In a way, to have like pretty good runs my first year on kind of the world circuit, it was a blessing, obviously, because that's what it's all about. But I guess the curse of it is there's nowhere to, like, how do you repeat that? If you take a step back, it's like, are you getting worse? Or I guess that's what I'm going through now, which I'm sure we'll talk about. Cause like at this year's OSG, I know you had an amazing run, borderline finalist. For me, it was kind of the polar opposite, where I really underperformed on what I thought I could do. I'm trying to take the approach of every year it's new events, it's a new roster. Just because you placed worse doesn't mean you got worse. It's really, they reshuffle the deck every year, so it's all about bringing your best, but also there's a bit of luck in this game. Like talking about the Arnold, when I podiumed, I'm incredibly proud of it, but I'm also very aware of the fact that I got a little bit lucky with the event selection. So like I mentioned, I'm good at moving events like farmers. I'm confident that I can hang with anyone in our class on farmers. Deadlift, not so much. At OSG, first go around, I was very much bottom pack. There was no deadlift in the prelims for the Arnold, except the deadlift was a farmer's, like fat back farmers. So deadlift for 4, carry it, deadlift for 4, carry it, medley. So you're taking out like one of my worst events and you're replacing it with my best event. So that's just something you just kind of got to get lucky with. You can't usually bank on there not being a deadlift in a contest. And we had a deadlift in the finals, but by the time you're in the finals, it's only 4 guys. So who really cares? If you're on the final stage, obviously you want to show your best on the final stage, but if I had zeroed every finals event, but got to the finals, like I would have been happy. So yeah, there's an element of luck in the sport. Obviously we try to bring our best package every year, but the results are probably going to fluctuate quite a bit.
So it was Josh Koliski, is that pronounced his name? He got first that year with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's an incredible athlete too, is he not? My gosh.
He is incredibly well-rounded, very nice guy. Yeah. I love watching him go about his business. He's kind of cool as a cucumber when he needs to be, but then he turns it on. And he's hit the completeness of his package that he brings to these shows is impressive. Contest to contest, year in, year out. He's definitely someone I look up to as sort of a model in the sport.
Yeah. Very, very cool. Very cool. Well, I am shocked so far by your story. So you got second at the 2023 Arnold Classic. I mean, that in and of itself, Alec, that is huge. That is like a really, really huge accomplishment. I know you said about, you have good events, these things suit you better. And, it's hard when you hit that and then, to come off of something where it's not as positive, but, nobody can take that away from you. And like you said, are you getting worse, or is it that just things change? There's some things that change and it just didn't quite line up for you. And that's the sport, you're an athlete. It doesn't always go the way that we wanted to go. But just the fact that you've reached that level already, I mean, that is very, very impressive. I did not know that. I should have researched more about you on that, but that's very, very impressive.
Yeah,
I'm
all good.
sorry.
No, it's all good. I really appreciate you saying that, and it is something I like. I'll always be proud of that. And you mentioned a guy like Josh. I guess my philosophy is me, you, everyone who's like kind of up and coming. We looked like the guys who are at the tippy top every contest. Like for them, the events don't matter.
Yeah.
So it's great to have events that are banker events for you. But we're all striving to be the kind of athlete who it doesn't matter what event we get, we're always at the top.
Yeah.
And this, like, I almost like I let that Arnold podium maybe like become part of my identity as an athlete to my detriment, because like I took it a little hard when I fell a good bit down the leaderboard at these last 2 world shows. But I'm trying to have the outlook that in training, I'm objectively getting better at everything. It's just I'm not yet the athlete who can get through to the finals, to the podium, regardless of the events.
Yeah.
I'm striving for that, and I'm going to keep at this until I'm that guy. But right now I'm not, and I'm trying to be not okay with that, but cognizant of that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's what the whole sport's about, you know, and you're definitely, I mean, you're definitely going to reach that. But this year's OSG, what were your thoughts on that first? Some of those events. Let's just go through and talk about it. The first event, that standard the press medley one. What was your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I quickly identified the yoke as like the turning point implement of that press medley. Yep. The first 2 implements were pretty well within my capability at the time. The yoke was heavy, but more than how heavy it was going to be, it was the unknown of how's that thing going to feel. Like you're studying video of what it looks like.
Yeah.
I mimicked it as best I could. Even the rules with what we were allowed to do. I was kind of training multiple different styles. I was a little hesitant to jerk it because I thought it was so unstable that might not work. I eventually kind of got over that because the standard yokes, it felt fine with. Mm-hmm. So I kind of transitioned from push press to a jerk. And that was when I had confidence that I could actually get that 282. And then beyond that, I started messing around with behind the neck split jerks because I found much more stability in that back rack position, especially with regular yoke bars that the crossbar is pretty fat. Yeah. Like in the front rack, that can almost feel like a log when it's pretty fat in there. But in the back rack, I found it was very stable. I could wait until the sway sort of dissipated and then hit it with the legs. Pretty late in the game, I learned that was not going to be allowed. So I had been training it both ways all along. My confidence was hit a little bit when I learned I wouldn't be able to do that because I knew I was kind of on the fence. Like I was getting those first 3 implements.
I was watching you do it.
Yeah.
I went on Instagram after watching you do it, and I messaged Lynn. I said, can I do behind the neck press? And he said, no behind the necks. And I thought, well, that stinks. And I was like, I wonder when this guy's going to find out.
Yeah, no, I had a, so I messaged him pretty early on asking him, and he sort of said, like, let me sit on it. Let me talk about it with the team and we'll see. So I was sort of just waiting. Once I saw the rules come out and it made no mention of it, I took that as it's good to go. If it's not in the rules, then I'm going to do it. So that's when my confidence really kind of soared because I was like, not only do I think I can get this, I think I can like actually get 3 in a pretty good time. I was pretty much punting on the block at that point, like not even messing with it. But I had someone message me who they saw me doing behind the neck and they said, hey man, I learned we can't do this. So I was devastated. But yeah, I gave it my best shot on the day. Like the warm-up area, it felt pretty good. It even felt good. Like I felt pretty stable when I picked it up. Yeah. Just didn't have it. And it decimated the field across every weight class. So like, I can't feel bad about it. Like Ben Donen didn't get it in our class. So like, I'm not going to feel bad about not getting it.
Yeah, but it was totally different.
Yeah.
In the back warm-up area.
Yeah.
The yoke, it was fine. You take it flopping, rolling, any of that messed up a lot of guys. That was fine for me. What messed me up on the yoke on the platform was when you picked it up, it wasn't the swing in this way. I was ready. It went back and forth like that because those bolts through there weren't tight. So when I first picked it up, I felt it lean, so I dropped it down, got it reset, and it still wasn't quite right, but I just pressed with it, And I mean, I wish I would have just taken half because I came really close to that. Yeah. But, it just didn't feel like in the warm-up area, I went up to comp weight, and I was like, I'm going to go out here. And I watched all these guys start zeroing or missing or this or that, and I literally looked at I was so confident walking out there. I was like, I'm getting ready to smoke this. And I got to it. Once I got to it, I was like, oh, okay, I see what's going on here.
Yeah. And it was in my head that I knew that the empty weight of the apparatus was pretty light. So it was in my head that like with the majority of the weight down low, it might be extra unstable compared to a regular yoke. But yeah, like you said, it was harder than pretty much anything most guys were using in training. So yeah.
If I would have kept my original training piece, I would have been able to do it.
Yeah, dude. I think that's the first I became aware of you as I saw that thing you built. I was like, God damn, this guy's going for
it. the 5-gallon buckets with the 2x4 straight. And then the funny thing about that is everybody got on there and actually got a lot of hate from because the official Strongman reshared it. So I got a ton of views, a ton of positive, but I went through there and I got a lot of hate comments saying it was going to break, it was going to crack, it wasn't going to last this amount of time. The funny story on that is my dad and I made that back in 2013. That was my first squat rack and bench press.
Oh wow! So you didn't build that for this. That was already in the rotation.
I already had it. All I did was drill holes through it so I could put the barbell through it. I had that for forever. I mean that was perfect. And if I had kept that probably would have. I probably would have been able to hit it because that felt so similar because the buckets were free on their own. They could go any which way they wanted, and they were 80 or 90 pounds at the bottom like that. So, each. So then you add the weight up top just a little bit. It was probably closer to it. So yeah, should have. Hindsight's always 20/20. I got those and I just kept building more and more stuff, like I ended up making one that rocked and it felt just like the one in the warm-up area. The one I ended with and made, I was like, okay, this will work. And it didn't. I made it too cushiony for myself. But the next event was the farm or the frame and then the Denny's. How did that go for you? And what were your thoughts coming into that? Because they changed the weight on that.
Yeah, so that was the kind of the start of the big disappointment for me this year because I knew pressing and deadlifting were going to be damage control events, and then moving events was where I could make my points, particularly with a style like a frame carry. The Denny's, I knew I'm not going to go fast with. I don't know how anyone goes fast with those things.
Me either.
I saw some guys at the Arnold this past contest fly with them, which is beyond me. But like I knew that I could fly with any frame that they could put in my hands. And then I'll kind of trudge my way through the Denny's. And I was looking at getting that done in, 30 to 35 seconds in training. That's about what I built up to. The frame, I guess my big sort of disappointment was I was very bad at adapting to different equipment at this contest. For whatever reason and again, that's part of the sport. That is the job of the athlete to adapt to different equipment. I just got very comfortable with my own frame and I got really confident on it. That frame just felt weird to me. Even they made it 60 pounds lighter. It peeled its way out of my hand, and I've never really experienced that before. So like I was still moving pretty fast with it. I dropped it like 5 to 10 feet before the line. I repicked it and saved it like a decent. I didn't waste too much time, but I dropped the frame, which was not what I expected or wanted. And then the Denny's, obviously no one really had the actual stone molds to train with. So I think just the irregularity of the shape, it sort of set me off. I stumbled and I fell. And then once you fall with that, you're not going to pick it just right again. It's sort of, so like I got again, like 5 to 10 feet to the finish line. But then I had to repick it like 4 or 5 times to actually get across the line. So basically at that moment, like I knew this is an event a guy like me needs like a top 5 finish in, like I had the farmers the previous year. Didn't happen. It was mid-pack, kind of. So I figured I was in trouble. My shot at the finals was not likely to happen. So yeah, big disappointment for me on that event. But eye-opening, because looking back, I could have found ways to sort of game plan for like a wide frame, different handles with maybe some specific grip work. And I just got comfy on my own setup, which I think is a pitfall that is easy to fall into in the sport.
Yeah. And something else that they changed on that event too. They made it where you could have unlimited drops with the Denny stones.
Yeah.
You were talking about being fast with it. I trained on the Denny stones to be controlled. I didn't think for 1 second that I was going to drop those Denny stones because I knew my grip was rock solid. I didn't even do hook grip. I just knew I wasn't going to drop those stones. I felt great on it, but my technique is slow. I mean, I just have pinned to my legs, and the way I was going, I was like, I'm going to make it. And there's going to be guys, if they drop it, that'll be it. But when they made unlimited drops, I mean, the guys were faster than me. The guys who won, they were faster than me. You talk about Josh Koliski, a lot of guys like that. They were, Dylan Thompson. They were fast.
Yeah,
that's just how it is. But it does change it a little bit in your mind when you have a safety net. You drop it and you just re-go with it. I mean, shoot, you can move with some speed, because if you drop it, you can re-go really fast too. As long as you've got your hook set, or your grip set, it doesn't really matter, And then the frame dropping that lighter, I was prepped probably pretty as perfect as I could have been for that too. I could have probably taken that heavier frame and done it in one shot probably.
Yeah, and that was what was tough to swallow for me, is because like I really had to eat my own words, because I was one of the guys like, oh man, I rather would have had the heavy one, because like I too felt ready for it.
Yeah.
But then the lighter one kicked my ass. I was like, wow, I better shut up from now on.
Well, even Rob Youngerman, you just competed against him.
Yeah.
Yeah, he did did he say he did a 675-pound frame in training or something crazy like that? Like, I mean, just ridiculous. But it didn't matter for him either, because it was just too slow. It's just one of those things, you still got to be fast. So that was a crazy event. Even guys like Dean. Dean's usually a beast. He dropped it, and if I'm not mistaken, I'm almost positive Benjamin Donnan dropped it too.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I'm almost positive. I just had rewatched it. Benjamin Donnan dropped it. Ricky, as incredible as an athlete he is, that's not his strong suit. So I knew he was going to drop it, But I figured,
and I want to say, like, awesome job for you on that run, because like I looked at you and I was like, wow, that's what I would have wanted to do. You knocked that event out of the park.
Yeah, there's always, you talk about perfect. Perfect would have been no Denny's down and back with that frame.
Yeah,
because if it would have been down and back with that frame, it would have been like 17. It would have been like 17 or 18 seconds, because my time was just about 8 seconds flat. Yeah. And I mean, my turn was fast, and I had trained for that. But it doesn't matter. It's funny. It's funny. Every event from that year could have been the difference maker. And you know what? I have that in every single event. You talk about constantly getting better and better and trying to close gaps. I could come back next year and blow it. But in my head, and how I've attacked it this year from that, you can't have that many holes. And if you have something just that you gave up this, and it might not even be a hole, something that you just miscalculated, you might get away with it with one event. But you can't do all 4 or 5 events and have that, I mean, like the yoke press. I mean, I could say, well, if I would have just reset and hit that better, the Denny's. Well, if I would have just trained to be a little bit faster, on the Denny's, not the frame, but the Denny's, and then come to the deadlift. How did that go for you? I can tell you how it went for me.
Yeah. So I knew that the first 2, very similar to the press medley, first 2 were well within my capability. The third one, I figured I'd get to a spot where I could hit that for a single, but hitting it as a third rep was not. I wasn't very confident in it. So like I approached training with the intent of getting strong enough to hit that third bar. Towards the very end of prep, I started to realize that that wasn't likely to happen. And really, I'd never deadlifted in a suit before. So I thought maybe that suit would kind of get me there. But again, by the end of prep, I knew it wasn't really there. So I switched my game plan pretty late in the game from initially kind of taking my time and strapping up through all 3 bars because I planned to get 3 to a quick pivot of I'm going to run through the first 2 and get them as fast as I can. My goal for that on game day was of everyone who only got 2 bars to be the fastest to get to. That was my goal. And I actually hit that. Again, damage control event, because 2 bars through that event is not getting you good points. Yeah. But relative to my own capability, I was actually fairly proud of that because I felt like I wasted no time. I ran up, I hook gripped the first 2. And while 585 isn't like max effort, I've never ran through 585 like a sprint. So I was really happy with it. I hook gripped it. I just don't feel confident with the mixed grip. Okay. I feel much more secure with the hook. It doesn't feel good, but you learn to deal with that.
Wow. That's see, I hate hook grip. When I came to achieving training the Denny's, I was like, no. I mean, if I have to, if it was like for max, I just, go with it, because it's going to last longer. But I was like, there's no way it's coming out of my grip. I'm good with that. But like the deadlift, which you're talking about, I initially was going to do really fast, try to do 3 bars really fast. And that would have been the difference maker for me in that event. But because like I keep talking about, my grip on the Denny's, the grip on the deadlift wasn't there, So I changed it in the back. I was like, okay, we're going to strap onto every bar because I don't have it in my grip now. We're going to take our time and we're going to try to make a massive PR for 675. When I pulled 635, I already knew don't even try the 4th bar. My erectors or my weights can be hanging on my erectors just there for me to die. I'm not going to do that after pulling this other. So, yeah, same kind of thing, but except for I wasn't able to hit my plan.
Yeah. No, and I took a run at 635. I got it honestly higher than I thought I would have. I got it almost to the knee. And once you can clear the knee, you can do all kind of like crazy things to hitch it. I didn't quite get it over the knee. But I took a run at it, but didn't have it. But like you said, with medleys in particular, medley heavy shows, like it's really just a game of decision making of do I go for speed or do I go for the rep? Yeah. And you kind of have to pick your lane, and it's tough to straddle both because if you go for speed and you don't get it, obviously the extra rep is what gets you the more points. But if you conserve energy, or rather getting the extra rep favors conserving energy, but it's still a race. So if you kind of know you're not going to get a rep, that's when it pays to go as fast as you can, unless of course you're one of the studs who can just race through every implement. But yeah, with medleys, it very much becomes a game of like, am I going for time efficiency or energy efficiency? And those lend towards different approaches.
Yeah. And it's hard. And it's like you said, it's hard to know what to do sometimes. And based off of your own capabilities makes it hard, because you have to, it's just a very complex sport. The last event was the sandbags and the drag. Now you say you're athletic and you're fast, and you obviously are. So how did that one go for you? How'd you feel?
So the story of my OSG was on my I did exactly what I wanted to and needed to on my damage control events, and the events that I thought I could shine on, I just did not, because it was a very even maybe worse. Because like I figured the frame to Denny, I was banking on that being a top 5 finish. Like I expected that of myself. That didn't happen. I didn't necessarily expect top 5 or anything like that on the final event, but I thought that would be a strong event for me. Man, I just did not feel comfortable in the rucksack. Again, on me, like you need to adapt to the different types of equipment we use. The Husafel sandbag really kicked my ass. It was much taller than I maybe expected. I didn't move particularly fast through the stone sandbag, but I got it, and I got to the Husafel bag. I practiced this in the warm-up area, my kind of familiarization with that sandbag that I hadn't touched before, but no one had touched before. my plan was to like bump it that extra bit up the chest to clear room for my legs to move fast. I figured that little bit of extra energy to get it higher would enable me to like really blast through the carry portion. So like I lifted it and when I bumped it that extra bit, the bottom just snuck right out because my knees kicked it away. And then I tried to hang on, but it's like I'm leaning back. And once it slipped out of my hands, I fell on my ass backwards. And then obviously you got 70 pounds, you're like rolling on your stomach to get up and then try to pick it up again. I tried to put my hands like way low the second time. And then when I picked it, I fell forward on top of the thing. So yeah, I didn't even move the Husafell bag at all. And that was just straight up embarrassing. Like
just because of it being different event, it just was a miscalculation that ended up blowing up in your face.
Yeah, like looking back, I could have carried it with how high I initially picked it. Yeah. I could have waddled. I just wasn't going to go as fast as I wanted to go. So I thought I had this idea in my head to go fast, and it blew up in my face. But like, again, it's on me. It's on us as athletes to factor into training, like how different equipment might factor into how we train. I didn't adapt to the new equipment, and that's on me. So that's something I need to get better at.
Yeah. Well, that's a good jumping point. Real quick, I don't know how much time you got, but
I'm cool to do as long as you want.
Good deal. This is really what I want to get into. Let's get into your training then. Yeah. Talking about adapting. You're a guy who's been training, in a storage unit, and I mean now you train a lot in you're in garage, I guess now. But
I've graduated.
Yeah. Where do your techniques come from? Where does your training and how do you structure your training? So let's start kind of with the structuring of your training. How do you go about attacking it, with what you're going to do and how you're going to, do that off season and then on season,
Yeah. So I believe, and my way is not the way. It's just the way that I've found works.
Okay.
When I started prioritizing event training more and putting kind of conventional gym lifts, not out of the picture, but just a little lower on the hierarchy of the attention that I paid, my performance at contests skyrocketed. Yeah. Obviously there's a way to go about high frequency event training properly without, running yourself into the ground. But a focus on event training, and specifically like with moving events, that's something that I perform pretty highly and consistently. I look at moving events like main lifts. And in all truth, that came back to bite me a little bit at the Arnold this year, because squats are super important, big time developmental lift. I've always had squats as sort of an assistance lift, because whenever I really pushed squats, I felt like doing my yoke and farmers, they just didn't jive together, because I always wanted deadlifts in, because deadlifts is an event we get scored on. I looked at squats as something like, yeah, it's cool, but we don't get scored on squats. We did at the Arnold, and I didn't do so well there. So like, again, that's part of the sport. But big picture speaking, squats is in less than 1% of strongman contests.
Yeah.
Just a priority on the events, training them, getting good technically, getting strong, getting fast, building endurance within the confines of event training is something I really believe in. And in terms of how to do that without running yourself into the ground, I'm a big believer in a sort of undulating periodization style, concurrent, conjugate, whatever you'd like to call it. But my feeling is that strongman is a conjugate sport. At any given contest, we have to display max effort strength, speed strength, explosiveness, repetition strength with high rep endurance stuff. So really, every strongman, whether they know it or not, in my opinion, is doing concurrent training. The way that I like to wave that currently, this cycle that I've built out, I sort of alternate between high stress and low stress days. Overhead events, I like to have in pretty much every session, especially if you're someone who relies on Olympic style, like jerks, very technical, especially with different implements. Jerks are something that I believe need to be in all the time to really get good at them. And I owe a lot of my development on overhead lifts specifically to the coach that I started to work with about 2 years ago, Jordan Roscoe, Rise and Defy Athletics. He coaches a handful of very accomplished strongman athletes, including Andrew Pepiot, who just podiumed at the Arnold this year. But yeah, so back to this kind of programming ideology. High frequency event training, sort of alternating between high stress and low stress days with conventional gym lifts and accessories thereafter.
Okay. And so I understand exactly what you're talking about. High stress, low stress. That's kind of your max effort, speed day kind of, because it's, it's events. It's hard to say, oh, this is my max, this is my speed kind of.
Yeah.
That's not quite always realistic, but high stress, low stress, that's going to dictate the weight and stuff that you're using. For the main lifts, for some compounds, throwing them in there, do you structure those as assistance, kind of like you're talking with the squat and stuff, or do you kind of do, like, say, let's do deadlift because you have to do deadlift? Do you kind of do that max effort, speed day, rapid? How do you work that in with that as well?
Yeah, so it does change based on, because every contest is different. It's got like a different mix. I've had times where I have a day where I'm heavy deadlifting in the 1 to 3 rep range, and then another day where I'm pushing higher rep deadlifts. But another important point that I don't want to gloss over, something that has really been useful for me is taking a training week, but not confining it to 7 days, stretching it out over 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Like currently I'm in a 12-day microcycle where it takes me 12 days to go through one iteration of everything I want to hit in a week. That's another way I've been able to stay fresh, in my opinion, is not cramming so many things into a 1 week, take more of like a bigger picture view of what a week truly is. So I don't, in this current cycle, I'm kind of focusing on heavy deadlifts and then some rep deadlifts on the same day, getting ready for a deadlift ladder. Because I want to have an extra day to actually get stronger on squats, because I just had a weakness exposed at the Arnold where I didn't play so highly on squats. So sort of doing a bit of a pivot on the idea that I first described of how do I keep squats in while prioritizing events. I'm trying to find a place where I can really drive up my squat strength in a way that is supportive of the whole package that I bring to the table as a strongman.
So how do you that's really crazy, the 12-day. How does when you structure that, that changes everything. Even like, like your 12-week peaking cycle, if that's how you're setting it up for training block for that. I usually run in 4-week waves. That's very typical of most training, and then like, I did conjugate for last year, for 2023, the entire year. That's when I did Worlds that year. I did all conjugate, so I kept it, max effort day, speed day, max effort speed day, and I structured it like that. So I know you're not doing it that quite structured with it. You have a strongman flow to that. But keep track of it over 12 days and then hit the next cycle. How does that? Walk me through kind of how you're doing that.
Yeah, so each lift, I think, lends towards a different progression scheme. For example, like for frame right now, I'm getting ready for a max distance frame carry at PSL, because kind of similar to what you just said of like heavy speed and endurance. I go through 3-week waves of a heavy frame day, a heavy and short distance frame carry, sort of a moderate weight, moderate distance, and then a lighter, longer carry. So like week 1 will be a 60-foot carry, week 2, 120, week 3, 180. And I'll go through those 3-week waves, kind of increasing the weight for each respective session until game day. Deadlifts, I'm kind of just taking 3 weeks to build out triples, 3 weeks to build out doubles, 3 weeks to build out singles. So there's an element of linearity to some lifts that I like. For other lifts, I like more of a wave progression. And that's just kind of learning what I respond to. Again, and when I say week, that's 12 days. So like that 3-week wave for frame takes 36 days to play out.
But see, I can kind of I can see what you're doing there, though. Linear periodization doesn't work a lot of times, especially at a certain weight, because in a 7-day week, you might not be recovered for it. You might not quite be ready. But if you stretch that over for 12 days, you might hit that. And it's not like you're doing that, for an entire off season. That's how you're taking your structure for peaking for a contest, over however long that may be. And over that amount of time, it's enough. Your body will continuously get better up to a point. And if you set your weight low enough at the start too, like you're talking about picking this weight, that's your body getting acquisition to that event. It's getting used to it. Then you go a little heavier. You've got that time. You hit it on a third time. But then after that, after you hit that certain amount of time, you can't just keep going up either. So when you get to that point where you've hit it, well, I guess that's my next question with that. When you get that weight, when you hit that third time, does it drop back down? Does it change, like in changing where does it go from there?
Yeah. So I guess I strive to increase the weight through each wave using the frame as the example. So week 1, my light long day my lighter longer day might be like 530 for 180 feet.
Yep.
I don't think that'll be particularly challenging. It'll be, it's tough to assign like RPE or reps in reserve to moving events.
Yeah.
But something that you can do, but isn't easy. And then if I'm going to go through four waves of these three kind of wave progressions, by the end of this prep, that 120 foot is going to be a hard 120 feet. I'm going to increase the weight of that, and I'm going to do the same thing for the 100 or the 100 for the 60 foot and for the 180 foot. I think I might have mixed up the numbers there when I said it, but the point being, the light, medium, and heavy session increases respectively each wave through the progression.
Yeah, and that's really interesting. But I was listening to. It's so funny. He's not a strongman, but I was listening to Bill Gillespie talk about that. You know who he is?
Bill
Gillespie,
sounds familiar.
He's he got the bench press world record at 62 in multiply, but he benched like 1107 or something. But he was talking about how far you can go with your training if you pick the weights light enough at the beginning and progress.
Absolutely.
If you progress from there, because he said, but you can't miss. You cannot miss. Like if you have a week where you miss or don't do this or you miss this session, he said he could throw it all out the window. He said, but there's a time frame with how you're training it to where you can get your body peaked to a very accurate, like a true maximum for yourself. And if you land that at the show, it's perfect. But getting there is really challenging.
Yeah. It definitely takes you need to have know yourself well to know when you start prep, what weights do you pick so that you're still getting your stimulus that you need, but you're giving yourself room to grow throughout the 3-month, 4-month, 5-month progression, however long the buildup is.
Well, and what you're saying there too, because I'm so close to what you're saying. A lot of this stuff, running conjugate style and then there's some events that you just have to be able to do, and it just kind of has to be almost that linear periodization to an extent. It gets to that point. Back in the day, you'd see a competitor that you got to compete against, and as an immature athlete, you're going to go up for that weight because you watched him do it on Instagram, and you want to prove it to yourself and anybody else who might be watching that you can still do it, and you're going to hit it on that cycle, or not on the cycle, but you're going to hit it on the cycle, and you're saying you're going to be able to hit it on the meet day. But that is such a detriment to your training. When you really get on your training and training that way, it's so complex. You have to put blinders on. It doesn't matter if this guy's lifting a 290, a 300-pound axle. If you're doing and you want to get to that point and your program says you're doing 225 for 5, or you're doing this and you have to run that for this wave and then this wave, you can't afford to go off of that, because what you've done is shot yourself in the foot if you do.
Yeah, 100%.
You have to really trust the process on that. And as far as it goes, what you're saying too, where did you learn your training? Obviously, a lot about training and structuring, because a lot of times when you talk to people and how they're doing it, it's just kind of take everything, throw it up on the wall, hope it sticks, hope you don't get smoked. Hopefully you last at the end. If you don't last till the end, just try to train a little harder and grit through it, the little lying motivational stories we all hear on Instagram. But, that's not reality. Reality is being smart on how you take that approach. So, where did you learn all of what you know? Where did your knowledge base come from?
Yeah. So, I mean, I was self-taught like early on, like just kind of learning from every source that I could. I'm a big believer in sort of like steal what you like from some people.
Yeah.
You don't have to take 100% of what they say
Yeah.
as gospel though. So sort of like you take in as much as you can, use what you like, discard what you don't. I mean, talking concurrent style, obviously like Louis Simmons sort of popularized conjugate training.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say I'm like a West Side guy through and through, but I feel like I've derived value from sort of what he's put out there.
Yeah.
Dave Tate, Ben Pollock, lots. I mean, we could be on for a really long time if I talked about every source that I feel like I've learned something valuable from. I do in my last year and a half in the Navy. I also earned a Master of Science in exercise science. So I have that added to my knowledge base because I did want to pair sort of a formal education with the practical side. Yeah. And I am a coach now. I'm a strength coach for the U.S. Army.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Very cool. That is really cool. Okay. So that's your current job.
Yeah. So strength coaching pays the bills now. It's kind of cool to sort of still have a foot in the military door because I separated myself from active duty. So still kind of support the mission, but to do so in a capacity that is more in line with my passion, which I love strength. I love building it, talking about it. And yeah.
Dude, how cool is this? I'm like your biggest fan now. This has been really, really cool. I really have enjoyed this.
Yeah, thanks, man. Me too.
Wow, that is really cool. There's something you said there I wanted to go off of talking about. Talking about all your training, and where you've learned all these different methodologies, and what you said there. I really want to touch on taking this from this guy, taking that from that guy. In the beginning, for me, I think it set me back a lot was I would watch this guy and what he said was law, and I would just run that. No, I've got to do this. This has got to be the way. Then I'd keep studying, and I would see pitfalls, and I'd look and I'd find something that I thought was better. It wasn't that I was trying to abort, the plan of what I was doing. It was just I was running into problems. I was getting injured. I was getting, overtraining, like I couldn't sleep at night because I was doing things, like linear periodization was terrible for me, how I used to run it, I mean, how I used to run it was no sense at all. Your conditioning comes down because as the weights get heavier, the reps come down. And we know now, you have to build your supplemental exercises based off of your weaknesses. You have to really focus on that. So doing things you don't like to do, you have to keep that level of fitness in, and that's how now I can actually make linear periodization, like you said, for specific movements work if I'm responsible enough to do it. But if you're not responsible enough to do it, it doesn't work. Same thing. I went and started learning about Louis years ago. I went all in on what I was going to do West Side. I'm never going to say Louis wrong based off of how smart he is and his knowledge base. And he takes, a ton of science and he just applies it all together to work. And it has to work because it's a scientific law. But as good as I do, there is still variabilities. That's why it's training, and you have to take things. I'm not saying he's wrong. He's right. But the application on some of the things that he did doesn't work for me. I'll just say that. The applications, like, for example, a major factor was speed day. I think conjugate's the best style of training you could ever put an athlete through. Football player, whatever you're trying to do, because it's going to give you all-around base, track athlete. But for me, that kind of, like Louis said, for training a sprinter, you don't have a sprinter do max effort day in the gym. He does that when he trains and he sprints. You put him through the speed circuit stuff for speed day. That's what's so vital for him. And speed day for us on a lot of movements that we do, it's like I find it like where it doesn't apply because it changes the movement on so many things. A lot of people try to say that speed day reinforces technique, but it really can't if you're doing it correctly because of how fast you're trying to move. Deadlift, it would work because that's pretty simple to get in that position. But like if you were even going to take something like a bench press, speed day, to me, if I'm benching at that rate I have to bench, I'm not going to stay in that same level of tightness.
Yeah, the technique that you're going to adopt at high velocity movements is often quite different from what you'll do when it's heavy.
Yes.
So yes, I mean the benefit of speed work. That's why I say like there's debate. There's plenty of debate over West Side for powerlifters. Some love it, some don't, and
Sure.
lots of different things work. But speed for a strongman, like we have to be fast. Like that is something that is specific for our sport. So that's why I think like conjugate concurrent training works almost better for strongman than it does for like powerlifting.
Yeah,
I might argue.
Yeah.
But again, there's no absolutes. Different things work. Many roads lead to Rome. And I think Louis said everything works, but not everything works forever. I don't know if I'm misquoting him, if that came from someone else. But I think I'm associating that with him.
Yeah, the way that's what was so cool about with what just kind of how he was is he was all about, he could see what somebody's weakness really was, just for the books. I bought all his books too, and reading his books, it was always, you can never go wrong with attacking your weaknesses. What where you're weak, the weakest link in a chain is always going to be what breaks. You can't argue that, the attack in your lower back, he would do all the variabilities, but when you go through his book and read, there's exercises that never, ever changed. That reverse hyper is always going to be the reverse hyper. A belt squat, you always got to train your legs. A belt squat, decompress the spine, just logical things that make sense. You can change your stances, but, because you want to be strong all through that area, but anyway, one last thing I'll say about the speed too. Something like a dumbbell, speed training, being fast, getting that pop is so crucial, how you can get underneath of it and be fast. Actually, an axle, any way you train, if you train with, using like a more of an Olympic style, using your legs, it has to be fast, have to have that pop, So like you said, it has to be there, but the application and how you apply it is where it takes, it takes a lot of thought. You can't just throw it up there and hope that it sticks.
For sure.
Yeah. Well, shoot, I don't know. Is there anything else you want to talk about? Anything else you want to go over? Anything we missed in that?
No, I'm good, man. I just want to say thanks for having me. I've enjoyed this a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. I hope I can keep going with this and it can keep growing. But my gosh, this was a great episode. I really appreciate you coming on. I really enjoyed your story. I've learned a lot too, listening, and just your mindset too. You're definitely not a newbie athlete. I mean, you're a guy who's done a lot of shows, and you've got a lot of maturity there. And getting to the second place at the Arnold's, that in of itself is such an accomplishment. That's the show that everybody, it doesn't matter what weight class, if they're open, that's one of the shows. That and Worlds is what everybody's gunning for. And you've all but tasted that. So you just got to keep pushing through, man. And I'm going to be right there, hopefully, with you, rooting on for you, too. Because, I mean, my goal next year is obviously, getting to the final. Whatever goal I set, I always perform just a little bit under. So this year I was gunning for the final. I was going to make it. And I just
so now gun for the podium. So even if you don't get it, you're still
that's what I'm telling everybody now. I told my dad the other day, I said, you're going to see me on the podium. He looked at me and I said, that's what I'm thinking in my head, Dad. I said the final just might be what we have to settle for. So, but anyway,
I look forward to keep climbing the ladder with you.
I appreciate it, brother. Well, you have a good night, man. Thank you once again for coming on. We'll definitely have you back on here again.
Awesome, man. Thanks.
All right, take care.
You too.